The first thing Marcus Eddard noticed when the shuttle doors hissed open was the smell like scorched plastic soaked in vinegar and left to ferment in a sulfur pit. His nostrils flared involuntarily, his breath catching in his throat behind the sealed visor of his suit. "Atmospheric readouts confirm what we expected," came a voice in his earpiece. "Lethal mix. Hydrogen sulfide, chlorine compounds, trace arsenic vapors. You're breathing through a miracle of engineering right now." Marcus didn't answer. He stepped down the ramp, boots sinking slightly into the spongy, maroon-colored soil of Detrion 7. The sky above was a greenish haze, dense with particulates, the sun a blurry smear behind the clouds. He walked forward slowly, each movement deliberate. His suit creaked with the effort of filtering the air fast enough to keep up with his physical activity. "Telemetry link is stable," the voice continued. "You've got 6 hours before filter saturation. Keep the suit sealed." He cut the comm channel. He wasn't in the mood for reminders. The alien ambassador waited ahead, standing beside a tall, ridged outcrop of stone. It was covered in fuzzy blue moss that seemed to breathe in slow pulses. The ambassador, called Vel, was over 7 feet tall and had skin like tarnished copper. He didn't wear any kind of breathing apparatus. Native species had evolved to thrive in this mess. Marcus approached and stopped at a respectful distance. "You arrived," Vel said, voice vibrating from a small device floating near his shoulder. "I was told humans rarely volunteer for death." "Well," Marcus replied, "we like to see for ourselves." Vel tilted his head. "This planet kills all outsiders. Even your strongest alloys degrade in the air. Breathing it unprotected is suicide. It is not up for debate." "Understood," Marcus said. "Still wanted to see it." Vel gestured toward a slab of rock nearby. "Your kind tried to breathe here once, 5 cycles ago. One of your explorers ripped his helmet off. He inhaled twice before collapsing. He dissolved before our medics could even reach him. Sounds like a rough day." Vel's eyes blinked out of sequence. "You are not disturbed," Marcus shrugged, then immediately regretted the movement as his suit whirred to compensate. "I've read worse reports." Vel studied him. "You believe you are different. I believe problems have solutions," Marcus said. "This is just another one." Vel turned and pointed toward a cluster of domed structures in the distance, barely visible through the haze. "We maintain an observation post there. You may investigate. But you will not survive without the suit. That is a certainty." Marcus nodded. "We'll see." He spent the next 4 hours walking through the settlement. The structures were made of a composite material that shimmered faintly under the acidic wind. Inside, the air was filtered, but the smell still seeped through. He cataloged everything: the way the buildings were sealed, the redundancy of the filtration units, the emergency airlock protocols. In one dome, he found a laboratory abandoned but intact. Equipment was strewn across the counters, some burned from exposure. A few alien researchers had made attempts to isolate the airborne toxins, but their chemistry worked differently. They never figured out how to make it safe for human lungs. Marcus sat down and pulled off his pack. Inside, he had a small kit of tools, a portable spectrometer, and a flexible 3D printer the size of a lunchbox. He began running tests, sampling the air through the lab's vents. The results came back fast: high concentrations of hydrogen sulfide and chlorine gas, just like the report said. He took note of the particle sizes, the reaction speeds, the way the toxins bonded with moisture. He didn't speak. Just worked. By hour 5, the first warning flashed on his visor. Filter saturation approaching threshold. He acknowledged it and kept going. He wasn't trying to invent a miracle. Just a workaround. He took a piece of lab tubing and cut it down. He filled it with a layered combination of materials: activated charcoal, zeolite, and crushed volcanic rock he'd scooped from outside. He bound the layers with mesh he stripped from a discarded air filter. It looked crude, but the chemistry was sound. Hydrogen sulfide would bond to iron oxide. Chlorine would be absorbed by the zeolite. The charcoal would mop up the rest. He connected the makeshift filter to a breather valve. Not elegant, not long-term, but maybe long enough. The second warning flashed. 15 minutes of air left. He held the filter in his hand, then looked toward the sealed airlock. Vel stood outside, watching through the transparent dome. Marcus opened the external hatch. The wind hit him like a furnace full of bleach. He stepped out and knelt down, breathing fast, checking the seals on his suit one more time. Then, he did something no one had ever done on Detrion 7. He broke the seal. The alarm screamed in his ears. He ripped the helmet off and jammed the makeshift filter into his mouth, breathing through it. He coughed violently, his eyes watered, his throat burned, but he didn't die, he kept breathing. Shallow measured through the filter. His lungs ached. He felt lightheaded, but he was still upright. Vel approached slowly. "You should be unconscious," Vel said. "Or melting." Marcus spat onto the ground. "Hurts like hell, but it's working. Impossible." He held up the filter. "Simple chemistry. Your people never needed it. Ours did." Vel stared at him. "You built this from scrap, from what you left behind." Vel's gaze lingered. "You are injured," Marcus nodded. "Yeah, my throat's raw, can't stay out long. You will come with me," Vel said. "You need treatment." Marcus let himself be led back to the dome. He didn't fight it. 2 hours later, he lay in a bio-restoration bed, not human tech, but close enough. His breathing was easier now, thanks to oxygen-rich air and a saline mist. His voice was hoarse. Vel stood at the foot of the bed. "Your species continues to bewilder me," Vel said. "You craft survival from garbage." "We don't like dying," Marcus rasped. Vel looked at the filter, now sealed in a containment case. "We must study this. Be my guest." "Why risk your life?" Marcus looked up. "Because you said it couldn't be done." Vel didn't answer. He left the room, the door sliding shut behind him. Marcus closed his eyes, throat still burning. He'd need another day before he could talk properly, maybe 2. But he'd done it. He survived the planet no one could breathe on, and he'd done it with a tube full of rocks and trash. Marcus woke to a pounding sensation between his ears and a taste in his mouth like he'd gargled a tire fire. The ceiling above him rippled faintly, a translucent panel filtering the strange ambient light of Detrion 7 atmosphere into something less offensive. His body felt heavier than it should have, limbs sluggish, chest sore like he'd spent the night coughing up gravel. He tried to shift, but something tugged at his left arm, a narrow tube taped to the inside of his elbow, leading to a small pouch of pale green fluid. "Do not sit up too quickly," Vel said from somewhere near the wall. "Your pulmonary tissues are irritated. Your blood is still carrying volatile traces." "I'd have guessed that from the taste," Marcus croaked. "What's in the drip?" "Electrolytes, anti-inflammatory agents, and an agent we use to stabilize dermal exposure." "Your skin reacted poorly to the airborne compounds. Didn't realize I'd set a fashion trend. You blistered under your jawline. We applied a salve. It should heal without scarring." Marcus blinked slowly. "That's generous of you." Vel stepped closer, hands clasped behind his back. Today he wore a garment stitched from overlapping metal mesh and matte black fabric. It moved like liquid when he walked. "We do not heal out of generosity. We require data." "Well, that's honest. You are the first of your kind to survive direct exposure. Your method, while inelegant, functioned. Our researchers believe it was a fluke. Let them believe that. They are not. Accustomed to improvisation." Marcus worked his jaw. It clicked. "Yeah, I figured. You guys like things tidy. Predictable." Vel's gaze lingered. "We do not understand how you tolerated the pain. The filter removed enough toxins to prevent immediate collapse, but your alveoli sustained damage. You should have lost consciousness." "I've had worse mornings," Marcus muttered, then coughed sharply, curling forward. His ribs ached. The monitor beside his bed beeped with rising urgency. Vel slid a panel open on the wall and pressed a button. The bed adjusted, raising Marcus's back by several degrees and releasing a warm mist that made breathing easier. "You should not speak much," Vel said, adjusting the mist's intensity. "It agitates the inflammation." "I'll whisper my genius then." Vel didn't respond, but his eyes narrowed slightly. A moment later, another figure entered the room, shorter than Vel, but still taller than Marcus, with translucent skin that shimmered like oil on water. She carried a tablet-like device, though it floated a few inches from her palm. "This is Researcher Tall," Vel said. "She requested access to you. I'm flattered." Tall's voice was higher, more musical. "Your circulatory markers are fascinating. You regulated blood oxygen despite localized hypoxia. Your brain activity never dipped below conscious thresholds." I was trying not to die. Helps keep you alert. She frowned slightly. You should have lost motor control after 2 minutes. You maintained function for over 9. Guess I'm just stubborn. Tall tapped her display, and a projection appeared beside Marcus's, an animated reconstruction of his exposure. The filter appeared as a glowing schematic, cycling through chemical interactions in real time. You created this without external reference, she said. With what I found, Marcus replied. I didn't invent anything. No, she said. You repurposed. Vel folded his arms, which is more difficult than invention in some cases. Neither of them sounded impressed, more like confused. Tall dismissed the projection. We request a demonstration. Marcus blinked. You want me to breathe poison again? You will remain in a filtered dome, she said. We will simulate the conditions using a controlled chamber. You will build another filter. Marcus looked at Vel. You're serious. We must verify it was not instinctual luck, Vel said. If your method is teachable, it could allow limited human presence on Detrion 7. Marcus groaned and leaned back. Well, when do you want to do this? Your respiratory lining requires 2 more rotations to stabilize, Tall replied. Then you will be observed. Of course, Marcus muttered. Nothing says recovery like homework. Later that cycle, after Tall and Vel had left, Marcus lay in silence, the only sound the low hum of the air regulators and the occasional hiss of mist release. The chamber was warm, almost too warm, and the bedding beneath him adjusted in small increments to compensate. He stared at the ceiling, watching the faint flickers of movement behind the translucent panel. Whether it was intentional design or just atmospheric interference, it reminded him of watching fish swim beneath ice. He wasn't sure what had surprised him more, that the filter had actually worked, or that the aliens had allowed him to try it in the first place. The next 2 cycles passed slowly. Recovery was dull. He wasn't allowed out of the chamber, wasn't allowed to speak more than a few words per hour, and was subjected to bursts of alien light therapy that made his teeth ache. Food arrived in the form of nutrient slurries customized to match his metabolic needs. They tasted like wet chalk and old cheese. When the time came, he was escorted to the simulation chamber by 2 silent attendants with crystalline spines and no visible eyes. The room was hexagonal, the walls lined with equipment that buzzed faintly, and the air was warm to mimic the outside atmosphere without the toxins. Vel and Tall stood behind a transparent barrier. You will build the filter using identical materials to those found in the lab, Vel said. You will not receive assistance. Marcus rolled his shoulders and looked at the table beside him. A pile of scrap, tubing, and filtration mesh lay next to a scanner and a basic bonding tool. He exhaled and got to work. 3 hours later, the second prototype was complete. It looked uglier than the first, but the structure held. Marcus fitted it onto the breather valve and held it up for inspection. Tall made a small gesture, and a mechanical arm extended into the chamber, taking the device for analysis. From behind the barrier, Vel said, Your time was longer. I wasn't dying this time, Marcus said. Kind of kills the pressure. Tall studied the readings. The construction is functionally identical, slightly more stable. Marcus wiped his forehead. So can we call it science now? Vel stepped into the chamber and examined the work table. Your kind would apply for a patent. We'd also name it something ridiculous and put it in a vending machine. Tall entered next, holding the second filter. It would take us 4 cycles to manufacture this using our standard processes. You assembled it in 3 hours. We like shortcuts. Vel looked at him. You understand this changes our protocols. I was hoping it would. Tall placed the filter on the table. Next, we tested on another human. Marcus raised an eyebrow. You got a volunteer hiding somewhere. Vel said nothing. Eventually, Marcus leaned against the table. You want me to train someone? You are the only one with first-hand knowledge, Vel said. We will not risk another unprepared test subject. Marcus tilted his head. You've never had to teach someone how to survive a death trap, have you? We have never needed to. Well, Marcus muttered, welcome to the learning curve. Vel studied him for a moment. You will require rest before the next phase. No argument here. As the attendants returned to escort him back, Marcus glanced at the filter still sitting on the table. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't even particularly safe, but it worked. And in a place where everyone had agreed survival was impossible, that meant everything. 3 days after the simulation chamber test, Marcus sat in a glass-walled observation dome perched at the edge of the Detrion research colony's perimeter. The dome itself was a recent addition, hastily assembled by the alien engineers using a polymer that shimmered faintly in the green air. Inside, the atmosphere was safe, the temperature cool, and the air scrubbed clean every 8 minutes. He was allowed to recline now, not confined to a bed, though his lungs still ached when he laughed too hard or breathed too deep. Across from him sat a creature that introduced itself as Eddard. It had 4 arms, each folded neatly on a table that had been lowered to human height. Its torso was wide and segmented, and its skin shifted colors with mood or temperature. Marcus hadn't figured out which. Eddard was not a scientist. It was part of the colony's logistical council, overseeing interspecies collaboration, though Marcus suspected the real reason for the visit was curiosity. "You are no longer contagious," Eddard said, watching Marcus sip a cup of what passed for tea, though it tasted like boiled spinach mixed with iron filings. "Contagious," Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I wasn't sick." "Contagious with unpredictability," Eddard replied. "Your actions have destabilized expectations. That's a poetic way of saying I broke the rules. Rules are not broken on Detrion, they are dissolved by the atmosphere." Marcus coughed once, shallow and dry. "You're not the first one to try metaphor around me, but I get it. I wasn't supposed to survive. Your survival has forced the Council to revisit the Planetary Viability Index. That index was closed for 912 cycles. Guess it needed dusting off." Eddard's skin pulsed a faint blue. "You remain irreverent. I remain human." They sat in silence for a moment. Marcus adjusted the makeshift sling wrapped around his ribs. The physical strain of breathing unfiltered air had caused microtears along the lung lining and bruising along his intercostals. It wasn't life-threatening anymore, but every breath reminded him of the gamble he'd taken. "You have been asked to train another," Eddard finally said. "Yeah." Vel mentioned it. "Your response was non-committal. I wanted to see if I could still speak in full sentences first." Eddard leaned forward slightly. "You will not be asked to risk yourself again. That's not the issue." Marcus tapped the side of his cup, watching the surface ripple. "The issue is whether I can teach someone to build a filter while their lungs are collapsing. They will remain in simulation. Simulation doesn't replicate panic, or burning throat, or the taste of your own alveoli going on strike." Eddard tilted its head. "We assumed you would be proud. Your design has been replicated 72 times, all successfully. None required refinement." "That's not pride," Marcus said, setting the cup down. "That's concern. You're treating it like a tool. It's not. It's a last resort." Eddard didn't respond. Its skin faded to a neutral gray. Marcus leaned back, wincing. "You want my help? Sure, I'll teach the method. But you need to understand this only works if someone's desperate enough to try something they don't believe will actually work. Faith, no, desperation. They're different." Eddard tapped a console embedded in the table. A schematic unfolded in the air between them, showing the filtration dome, the lab, and a new wing under construction. "We are building a training center. Your presence is required for its opening." Marcus groaned. "You're putting my name on a building, aren't you? Only the filter, the Eddard device, it has been filed in our registry. Please tell me there's no statue involved. There was a proposal." He rubbed his temple. "You know humans usually wait until someone's dead for that kind of thing." Eddard seemed to consider something. "You are not dead. That is why we are interested." Later that evening, Marcus walked slowly through the nearly completed training wing, accompanied by Vel. The place was quiet, illuminated by soft floor lighting that adjusted based on motion. Transparent panels revealed sealed chambers, each designed to simulate varying concentrations of the toxic air outside. The filtration units were mounted to the walls, ready to be tested by incoming trainees. "You'll have volunteers?" Marcus asked. Vel nodded. 4 candidates, 1 from your species, 3 from others who require similar respiratory protections. What happens if they fail? They will not be exposed to live toxins, only chemical analogs. No permanent harm. Marcus paused by one of the chambers and peered in. A set of tools identical to those he'd used had been laid out on a table inside. You're not teaching them how to build filters. You're teaching them how to think like someone who needs one. Vel didn't deny it. Your method cannot be replicated by instruction alone. It is the reasoning under stress we hope to observe. And the human volunteer, she is from your planetary research division. Her lungs were reinforced with synthetic alveolar mesh. She is familiar with the risks. You reinforced her lungs. It was her condition for participation. Marcus exhaled slowly. You're adapting faster than I expected. Vel regarded him. That is new for us. Adapting to uncertainty. They continued walking until they reached a room that overlooked the simulation floor. A control panel blinked quietly beside a curved display. Marcus sat in front of it and tapped through the training protocols. Everything was in place, no surprises. Just the kind of thing he would have hated if he were the one inside. I'll run the first session, he said. Vel looked at him. You are still recovering. I'm not doing laps, I'm giving instructions. Vel gave a small nod. Then it is yours. The next morning, the first candidate entered the simulation chamber. She was human, younger than Marcus, her gait confident but cautious. Marcus watched through the one-way glass, arms crossed over his chest. Her name was Porter, and she'd already been briefed on how the original filter was built. But the tools had been rearranged and nothing was labeled. He pressed the intercom. You've got 10 minutes, no instructions, just the materials. Assume your air supply fails at minute 11. She didn't flinch, just turned and got to work. Marcus watched her hands move not too fast, not hesitating either. She separated the mesh from the tubing, checked the seal integrity, started layering the filtration material. She wasn't replicating his method. She was building her own. At minute 8, she held up a completed device. Marcus turned to Vel. Not bad. Vel examined the readout. It has an 81% efficiency rate. Sufficient. She did it under pressure. That's the point. Vel watched the young woman exit the chamber, her expression unreadable. She will instruct the next wave, Vel said. Marcus nodded. That's the idea. A week later, the training center opened officially. No ceremony, no fanfare. Just a quiet acknowledgement in the planetary database. The first class of trainees included engineers, pilots, and one linguist who claimed to have studied 12 dialects just to ask the right questions under duress. Marcus remained on Detrion for another 5 days, long enough to ensure the protocols were followed. The pain in his ribs faded to a dull stiffness. His lungs stopped catching on every inhale. On his final evening, he stood outside the dome in a secondary suit, thinner now, lighter, designed using data from the filter. The air still hissed past him, bitter and angry, but he didn't flinch. He held the original filter in his hand, now sealed in a display case. Vel approached from behind. No words for a while. You proved survival was possible, Vel said eventually. I proved desperation does strange things. Vel studied the horizon. It is enough. Marcus handed him the case. Keep it. Hang it somewhere you'll forget about it and then rediscover it when things get rigid again. Vel accepted it. We will remember. Marcus turned and walked back toward the shuttle pad already sealed for launch. He didn't look back. There were no speeches, no applause. Just breathable air, and the quiet knowledge that someone else might now survive what nobody else ever could.